The hallway is empty at 11:47 p.m. The fluorescent lights flicker once, twice, then settle into their usual hum. Everything about this building feels tired. The peeling paint on the walls, the scuffed linoleum that hasn't been replaced in 20 years, the vending machine at the end of the corridor that buzzes even when no one's using it. This is the kind of place where people come when they're rebuilding or when they've stopped building altogether. Tonight, the silence feels heavier than usual, like the building itself is holding its breath. On the third floor, apartment 312, Maya Chen sits in her wheelchair, staring at the front wheel. It's not moving. She tries again, pushing forward with both hands, but the chair lurches to the left and stops completely. The brake isn't engaged. The wheel isn't locked. It's just broken. She can see it. A crack in the axle mount. The kind of damage that doesn't happen suddenly. It's been building for weeks, little clicks and resistance that she ignored because she couldn't afford not to. And now, 12 hours before the most important interview of her life, the chair has finally given up. Maya is 31 years old. She has a 6-year-old daughter sleeping in the next room. She has $17 in her checking account and a job interview tomorrow at 9 a.m. for a position that could change everything. Benefits, stability, enough money to move them somewhere better. Somewhere Lily could have her own room instead of sharing this cramped one-bedroom with her mother. The interview is downtown, 40 minutes away by bus, and the bus stop is 3 blocks from here. 3 blocks she cannot walk. She tries the wheel again. Nothing. Her hands are shaking now, not from the effort, but from the panic starting to creep in. She could call her sister, but her sister is 2 hours away and works the early shift at the hospital. She could call the building manager, but he's already told her twice that repairs aren't his responsibility, that she needs to contact her insurance company, that he's not a charity. She looks at her phone. It's almost midnight. There's no one to call. In the basement, Thomas Brennan is mopping the storage room floor. He's 53 years old and looks older. His hands are calloused, his back perpetually bent from years of work that requires looking down. He's the night maintenance man for this building and 2 others on the same street. It's not glamorous work. It's not even particularly well paid. But it's quiet, and quiet is what Thomas needs. He's been working nights for 7 years now, ever since he got out. 7 years of staying invisible, of keeping his head down, of making sure no one looks at him too closely or asks too many questions. He finishes mopping and checks his watch. 11:52. He needs to check the 3rd floor hallway. Someone complained about the lights flickering again. As he rides the service elevator up, he runs through his mental checklist. Check the lights, check the emergency exit signs, make sure the stairwell doors are locked from the outside. He's done this routine 5 nights a week for 7 years. He could do it in his sleep. The elevator doors open on the 3rd floor, and that's when he hears it. A sound that doesn't belong in the midnight quiet. Someone crying. Not loud, not dramatic. The kind of crying people do when they're trying not to be heard, when they're alone and exhausted and out of options. Thomas stands still. In 7 years, he's learned that the best way to stay invisible is to ignore things that aren't his business. People in this building have problems. Everyone has problems. His job is to fix the lights and mop the floors, not to get involved. He walks past apartment 312. The sound is coming from inside. He keeps walking, gets to the light panel, opens it. The connection is loose, just like he thought. He tightens it, tests the lights. They stop flickering. Job done. He closes the panel and turns to head back to the elevator. He makes it 3 steps before he stops. 7 years ago, Thomas Brennan was someone else. He had a different name, a different life, a career that required 3 engineering degrees and security clearance. He built systems for medical devices, specialized in mobility equipment for wounded veterans. He was good at it, maybe the best. And then he made a choice that cost him everything. A choice that put him in a federal prison for 5 years on charges of corporate espionage. The truth was more complicated, but the truth didn't matter. What mattered was that when he got out, no one would hire him. Not as an engineer. Not as anything that required trust. So he became Thomas Brennan, night maintenance man, invisible and forgettable. He hasn't touched engineering work in 7 years. He hasn't allowed himself to. But standing in this hallway, hearing that sound, He knows exactly what's wrong before he even sees the wheelchair. He's heard that specific kind of despair before. He's heard it from soldiers whose devices failed them, from people whose independence hung on mechanisms that weren't supposed to break, but sometimes did. He turns around and walks back to apartment 312. He knocks, soft enough that it won't wake the child he assumes is sleeping inside. The crying stops. There's a long pause, then a voice, cautious and tired. "Who is it?" "Maintenance. I heard something. Just checking if everything's okay." Another pause. He can picture her on the other side of the door, deciding whether to trust him, whether this is help or another kind of problem. Finally, the door opens a crack. Maya Chen looks up at him. Her eyes are red. She's still wearing her interview clothes. A blazer that's been pressed so many times the fabric is starting to shine, slacks that were probably expensive once but now show their age. She's been preparing for tomorrow, making herself ready, and now none of it matters because her wheelchair is broken. "I'm fine," she says. "Sorry if I disturbed anyone." Thomas looks down at the wheelchair. He can see the problem immediately. The axle mount has fractured. It's a structural failure, the kind that needs replacement, not repair. This chair is at least 10 years old. It's been maintained well, but some things can't be maintained forever. Metal fatigues, welds fail, and when they do, they don't wait for convenient moments. "Your wheel's out," Thomas says. "I know. I'll deal with it tomorrow." "You have somewhere to be tomorrow?" Maya hesitates. She doesn't know this man. He's the maintenance guy. She's seen him around, but they've never spoken. She doesn't know if she can trust him, doesn't know what he wants. But she's so tired, and the despair is so close to the surface, that the truth comes out before she can stop it. "Job interview, 9 a.m., downtown." Thomas nods slowly. He looks at the wheelchair again, calculating. The mount is fractured, but it's not completely separated. The wheel is still attached, just unstable. With the right temporary reinforcement, it might hold long enough. It won't be pretty, and it won't last more than a few days, but it could get her to that interview. "I might be able to fix it," he says. "I don't have money for repairs right now." "Didn't ask for money." Maya looks at him. In the harsh, fluorescent light of the hallway, she can see his face more clearly. He's older than she thought, with deep lines around his eyes and gray stubble that needs shaving. His uniform is clean but worn. His hands are scarred. He looks like someone who's worked hard his whole life and has nothing to show for it but more work. She doesn't know why he's offering to help. She doesn't know what he expects in return. But she's out of options, and sometimes you have to take a chance on a stranger's kindness. "Okay," she says quietly. "Thank you." Thomas nods. "I need to get some tools. I'll be back in 20 minutes. Don't touch the chair." He walks away before she can respond, heading back to the service elevator. Maya closes the door and sits very still, afraid to hope, afraid to believe this might actually work out. In the next room, Lily sleeps, oblivious to her mother's crisis, dreaming whatever 6-year-olds dream. The security camera in the third-floor hallway records everything. It's mounted in the corner near the elevator, angled to capture the full length of the corridor. The footage is grainy, the kind of low-resolution recording that makes everything look slightly unreal, like watching life through frosted glass. The timestamp in the corner reads 12:03 a.m. Thomas Brennan exits the elevator carrying a toolbox. He walks to apartment 312 and knocks again. This time Maya opens the door wider. She wheels back to let him in. The camera can't see inside apartments, so what happens next is invisible to its eye. But it records Thomas entering, records the door closing, records the empty hallway settling back into its fluorescent silence. Inside apartment 312, Thomas kneels beside the wheelchair. He's brought his toolbox, but he already knows the tools won't be enough. What he needs is a replacement part, a new mounting bracket, preferably titanium or reinforced steel. What he has is basic maintenance equipment and a mind that hasn't stopped thinking like an engineer even when he tried to make it stop. He examines the fracture under the small LED light he carries. The crack runs through the weld point where the mount connects to the frame. It's a stress fracture caused by years of weight and movement, accelerated by a manufacturing defect he can identify just by looking at it. This chair is from a batch made 12, maybe 13 years ago by a company that went bankrupt after a lawsuit over faulty welds. He remembers reading about it. He remembers thinking about all the people who didn't know they were sitting on equipment that would eventually fail them. "How long have you had this chair?" he asks. 11 years. It was my mom's before. She doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't have to. Thomas understands. This chair is a legacy, a connection to someone who's gone. It's not just mobility equipment, it's memory. "I can't promise this will hold forever," Thomas says, "but I can make it hold for a few days, maybe a week if you're careful. That's all I need, just long enough for the interview." Thomas opens his toolbox. He has metal epoxy, steel wire, duct tape, and a small welding torch he's not supposed to have because it's against building regulations. He starts working, his hands moving with a precision that seems at odds with his job title. He reinforces the fracture with wire, wrapping it tight and securing it with epoxy. He uses the torch to spot weld reinforcement, working quickly and carefully, shielding the flame so it doesn't set off the smoke detector. As he works, Maya watches. She's seen repairs before. Maintenance guys who do the minimum, who patch things just enough to say they tried. This is different. This man works like someone who understands the equipment, who knows exactly what he's doing and why. His hands don't hesitate. His movements are economical, professional. She finds herself wondering who he really is, why he's working as a maintenance man if he clearly has skills that should have taken him somewhere else. "You're good at this," she says. Thomas doesn't look up. "Used to do something like it. Long time ago." "What happened?" "Made some bad choices." He doesn't elaborate, and Maya doesn't push. Everyone in this building has a story. Most of them involve bad choices and bad luck, and the thin line between the two. Thomas finishes the reinforcement and tests the wheel. It holds. The movement is still slightly irregular. The temporary fix can't restore the original smoothness, but it's functional. Maya could make it 3 blocks. She could make it to the interview. "That should do it," Thomas says, standing up. His knees crack. "Don't put too much lateral pressure on it. Straight lines are better than turns. And get it properly fixed as soon as you can." "I will, thank you. Don't mention it." Thomas packs his tools and heads for the door. Maya follows, wheeling the chair carefully, testing its new stability. It's not perfect, but it's movement, it's possibility. "Wait," she says. "I don't even know your name." "Thomas." "I'm Maya. You don't know what this means. I've been trying to get a job for 8 months. This interview, it's the first real chance I've had. If you hadn't, you would have figured something out." Thomas says. "People always do. But they both know that's not quite true. Sometimes people don't figure it out. Sometimes the wheelchair stays broken and the interview gets missed and the chance slips away. Sometimes the difference between getting by and going under is whether a stranger decides to knock on your door at midnight." Thomas leaves. The security camera records him exiting the apartment at 12:41 a.m., carrying his toolbox, his posture still bent, his face still tired. He walks to the elevator. The doors close. The hallway returns to empty. But Thomas doesn't go back to the basement. Instead, he takes the elevator down to the parking lot. The camera there records him walking to his car, a 15-year-old sedan with rust around the wheel wells and a passenger door that's a different color from the rest of the body. He opens the trunk and pulls out a bag. It's a small duffel, the kind someone might use for gym clothes or an overnight trip. He carries it back inside. The lobby camera captures this. The timestamp reads 12:49 a.m. Thomas walks past the front desk, empty at this hour, the night security guard making rounds somewhere in the building, and heads to the stairs. He takes them down instead of up, going below the basement level to the sub-basement, a space that's not on the building's official floor plans but exists in most older buildings like this. Storage, mechanical rooms, forgotten spaces. Thomas has been living in the sub-basement for 2 months. Not officially. Officially, he has an address 3 neighborhoods over. a room he rents monthly in a house with 5 other people. But that room costs money he's been saving for something else, and 2 months ago he made a decision. He started sleeping in the sub-basement, in a mechanical room that no one checks anymore. On a camping pad he rolls up every morning and hides behind the boiler. He's been pocketing his rent money, adding it to the savings he's been building for 7 years. He has a goal. He's almost there. Or he was almost there. Until tonight. Thomas sits on the concrete floor of the mechanical room and opens his duffel bag. Inside is $1,100 in cash. It's everything he's saved. Every dollar from not paying rent, from skipping meals, from walking instead of taking the bus. It represents 7 years of invisible work and careful sacrifice. In 2 more weeks, he would have had enough, $1,300. That's what he needs to pay for the application fees and certification testing that would let him work as an engineer again. Not under his real name. That name is ruined forever. But under Thomas Brennan, with enough legitimate credentials that maybe someone would take a chance on him. Maybe he could stop mopping floors and fixing lights and being invisible. Maybe he could build things again instead of just maintaining them. He counts the money. 1,100 exactly. Then he puts 900 back in the bag and pockets the remaining 200. He knows what he has to do. He's known since the moment he saw Maya's wheelchair. The temporary fix he did will hold for maybe 3 days. 4, if she's lucky. But temporary fixes fail. They always fail. And when that fix fails, Maya will miss more than an interview. She'll miss work. She'll miss taking her daughter to school. She'll miss the small daily movements that independence requires. Thomas has seen it before. He's seen what happens when mobility equipment fails at the wrong time. He's seen the cascade of consequences that follows. There's a medical supply warehouse on the east side of the city. They're open 24 hours for emergency orders. Thomas knows because he used to work with their engineering team, back when he was someone else. They'll have the part Maya needs, a proper mounting bracket, not a temporary fix. It costs $180. With tax and the late-night service fee, it'll be right around $200. Thomas stands up, puts the duffel bag back in its hiding spot, and walks to his car. The parking lot camera records him leaving at 1:17 a.m. It doesn't record him coming back. By the time he returns, it's 3:43 a.m., and he enters through the service entrance, which doesn't have a camera. He's carrying a small box. The third-floor hallway camera picks him up at 3:49 a.m. He walks to apartment 312 and stops. He looks at the door for a long moment, then kneels down and sets the box on the floor. He doesn't knock. Instead, he takes a piece of paper from his pocket, a page torn from his notebook, and writes something on it. He folds the note, tapes it to the box, and walks away. The camera records all of this, the timestamp, the silent footage. The man kneeling in a deserted hallway in the middle of the night, leaving something for someone who doesn't know she needs it yet. Inside the box is the mounting bracket. In the note is a simple message written in careful block letters. For a permanent fix. No charge. You earned this chance. Make the most of it. T. Thomas goes back to the sub-basement. He doesn't sleep. He sits on the concrete floor and looks at the $900 in his duffel bag. It's not enough anymore. He's back to square one. Maybe square zero. He'll need to start saving again, which means more months of sleeping in mechanical rooms and eating ramen and being invisible. Another year, maybe. Maybe more. But sitting there in the dark, Thomas finds he doesn't feel as bad as he thought he would. For 7 years, he's been trying to fix the mistake that destroyed his life. He's been trying to earn back the right to be someone other than a maintenance man, to use his skills for something more than mopping floors. Tonight, he used those skills. He fixed something that mattered. He gave someone a chance they wouldn't have had otherwise. That has to count for something. Maybe not enough to erase the past, but enough to make the present bearable. At 7:30 a.m., Maya Chen opens her apartment door to get the newspaper someone delivers to the wrong unit every Thursday. Instead, she finds the box. She opens it, reads the note, opens the box again to look at the part inside. She recognizes it immediately. A mounting bracket, professional grade, exactly what her chair needs. She checks the note again, looking for some kind of catch, some explanation for this impossible kindness. There's nothing but those few words and a signature that's barely more than an initial. She wheels to the elevator as fast as her temporarily fixed chair will allow. She goes down to the basement. Thomas is there, emptying trash bins, his back to her. When he turns around and sees her, something flickers across his face. Surprise, maybe, or concern that his cover is blown. "You can't do this," Maya says. "This part, it's expensive. I can't accept." "Already done," Thomas says. "Can't return it." "Then let me pay you back. I can set up a payment plan or—" "Don't want payment." "Why would you do this? You don't even know me." Thomas sets down the trash bin he's holding. For the first time, he looks directly at her. His eyes are tired, but there's something in them that wasn't there before. Something less invisible. 20 years ago, he says quietly, I designed mobility equipment, wheelchairs, prosthetics, support systems for people who needed them. I was good at it. Built some of the best systems on the market. And then I found out the company I worked for was selling defective units to veterans' hospitals because they could charge more. I tried to blow the whistle. Instead, they framed me for stealing proprietary designs. I went to prison. Lost everything. When I got out, no one would hire me. This is what I do now. Maya listens, understanding dawning on her face. The company that made my chair went bankrupt after a lawsuit over bad welds. I testified in that case from prison. Didn't help much. But I knew which batches were affected. I knew your chair was from one of them the moment I looked at it. You testified from prison. Some mistakes you can't undo, but you can try to keep them from hurting more people. They stand in the basement, this unlikely pair, a woman preparing for a job interview and a man who used to build the future and now empties trash cans. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead. Somewhere in the building, a pipe clanks. Normal morning sounds, except nothing about this morning is normal anymore. You gave up your savings for this, Maya says. It's not a question. She can see it in the way he holds himself, in the resignation behind his eyes. You were saving for something. I'll save again. How long will that take? Thomas shrugs. Long as it takes. Maya looks down at the box in her lap, then back at Thomas. She's thinking about the interview, about the chance he's given her, about the strange mathematics of kindness and sacrifice. She's thinking about how she's going to tell this story to Lily someday, about the man who fixed their chair at midnight and changed their lives. If I get this job, she says, I'll pay you back. Not because you want me to, but because that's what you do when someone gives you a chance. You pass it forward. Thomas nods. Just get the job first. That's payment enough. Maya goes back upstairs. She has 2 hours before she needs to leave for the interview. She installs the new mounting bracket. It takes her 20 minutes, working carefully, following the muscle memory of a decade of chair maintenance. When she's done, the wheel moves smoothly, properly, the way it's supposed to. She gets dressed, double-checks her resume, makes sure Lily is ready for her sister to pick her up. She leaves the building at 8:15. The interview goes well. Better than well. The hiring manager is impressed by her persistence, by the fact that she showed up early despite living on the other side of the city, by the way she answers questions with a combination of humility and confidence that comes from fighting for every opportunity. They call her back for a second interview the next week. 2 weeks after that, they offer her the job, full-time, benefits, salary that will let her and Lily move to a better place. But that's the future. What happens in the present, 2 days after Maya's interview, is that someone complains to the building manager about a person sleeping in the sub-basement. The manager, annoyed at having to deal with another problem, checks the security footage. He's looking for proof of trespassing, evidence he can use to call the police or justify an eviction. Instead, he finds Thomas Brennan's midnight repair session. He watches the footage from the third-floor hallway, Thomas entering Maya's apartment at 12:03 a.m., leaving at 12:41. The manager's first instinct is to assume something improper happened. He's reaching for his phone to call the police when he decides to check more footage, to build a complete case. He watches Thomas go to his car. He watches him leave the building. He watches him return hours later with a box. He watches the scene at 3:49 a.m. Thomas kneeling in the empty hallway, leaving the box, walking away without knocking or asking for anything in return. The building manager sits back. He's confused now. He scrolls through more footage, looking for context. He finds Thomas entering the sub-basement at 12:49 a.m. He finds evidence of Thomas sleeping there, not that night, but dozens of nights before, coming and going at odd hours, always careful, always quiet. The manager realizes Thomas has been living in the building unofficially for months. The manager should be angry. He should call the police or at least fire Thomas on the spot. But something about the footage bothers him. Something about the way Thomas moved through those hallways, the way he knelt in the empty corridor at 3 a.m. to leave something for someone who didn't know she needed it. The manager finds himself wondering what was in that box. What could have been worth a round trip to the other side of the city in the middle of the night? He calls Maya Chen. She answers on the third ring. Suspicious. The building manager has never called her before, and calls from the building manager are rarely good news. Ms. Chen, this is David Pryor, the building manager. I'm calling about Thomas Brennan, our maintenance worker. Did he visit your apartment on Tuesday night? Maya's heart sinks. She thinks Thomas is in trouble. She thinks her accepting his help might have cost him his job. He fixed my wheelchair. It was broken, and I had a job interview in the morning. He didn't charge me anything. He was just helping. And he came back later that night. He left a part I needed, a replacement part. I didn't ask him to. He just did it. There's a long pause. Ms. Chen, do you know where Thomas got that part? I don't know. I assume he had it or knew where to get it. The security footage shows him leaving the building at 1:17 a.m. and returning at 3:43 a.m. That's a 2.5-hour window in the middle of his shift. He could lose his job for leaving the building during work hours. Maya goes very still. Please don't fire him. He was helping me. If anyone should get in trouble, it's me for accepting. I'm not going to fire him, the manager says. I'm trying to understand what happened. The part he left you, was it expensive? Yes, about $200. Another pause. And he didn't ask you to pay him back? No. I tried to pay him, but he refused. The building manager thanks Maya and hangs up. He sits at his desk, staring at the security monitor, thinking about Thomas Brennan. The maintenance man he's barely paid attention to in 7 years. The man who shows up on time, does his work, never complains, never asks for anything. The man who apparently sacrificed several hours of sleep and $200 to help a tenant he barely knew. The manager does something he's never done before. He runs a background check on Thomas Brennan. It takes him 30 minutes to find the truth, the arrest record, the trial, the 5 years in federal prison for corporate espionage, and buried deeper, in old news articles and court transcripts, the real story. An engineer who tried to expose his company's fraud and got destroyed for it. The building manager prints out everything he finds. He puts it in a folder. Then he goes to the basement to find Thomas. Thomas is replacing a broken light fixture in the laundry room. He doesn't see the manager approach. When he turns around and finds David Pryor standing there with a folder in his hands, his first instinct is to prepare for the worst. He's been fired before. He'll be fired again. That's the cost of trying to stay invisible. Sometimes you slip up, and when you slip up, there are no second chances. I saw the security footage, the manager says. Thomas nods. He doesn't try to explain or defend himself. What's the point? You left the building during your shift. You were gone for 2.5 hours. I know. You've been sleeping in the sub-basement. Yes. For how long? 2 months. The manager opens the folder. I also found out who you really are, what you did before you worked here. Thomas doesn't respond. There's nothing to say. The past is the past, and it follows him everywhere, no matter how invisible he tries to be. Why didn't you tell anyone? The manager asks. Why didn't you tell me you used to be an engineer? Because it doesn't matter. I'm not an engineer anymore. I'm maintenance. It matters to me, Pryor says. What you did for Maya Chen, leaving your shift to buy that part, using your own money, you could have lost your job. Why would you risk that? Thomas looks at the manager directly for the first time. Because some things are more important than keeping a job. Pryor nods slowly. He looks down at the folder, then back at Thomas. I'm not going to fire you, but I can't have you sleeping in the sub-basement. It's a liability issue. However, he pauses. There's a vacant unit on the first floor. Studio apartment. The last tenant broke the lease early. It's been sitting empty for 3 weeks while I look for someone reliable. You can have it. I'll take the rent out of your paycheck, $150 a month. That's well below market, but you've been maintaining this building for 7 years without complaint, and from what I can see, you've been doing work that goes beyond your job description. Thomas stares at him. Why would you do that? Because Maya Chen called me after we spoke. She told me the whole story. She told me you gave up your savings to buy that part, that you were trying to get certified to work as an engineer again. She said you were the reason she got her job, that without your help she would have missed the interview. The manager pauses. And because I checked the maintenance logs, every repair request you've handled over the last 7 years has been done thoroughly and professionally. You don't do the minimum. You fix things properly. This building is in better condition than it was when you started, despite having no budget for major renovations. I should have noticed that before. I'm noticing now. Thomas doesn't know what to say. In 7 years of being invisible, of keeping his head down and expecting nothing, this moment doesn't make sense. People don't reward maintenance men. They don't care about the work that happens at midnight when no one's watching. There's more, Pryor continues. The building's HVAC system is 20 years old and constantly breaking down. I've been hiring contractors to fix it, but none of them solve the underlying problems. I need someone who understands systems, who can design a long-term solution instead of just patching things. I'm willing to pay for consultation work, separate from your maintenance position, $50 an hour, if that helps you save up for your certification. I don't have my credentials anymore. I don't care about credentials. I care about competence. And from everything I've seen, you're more competent than anyone I've hired in the last decade. Thomas feels something he hasn't felt in 7 years. Hope. Not the desperate, clawing kind of hope that keeps you going when you have nothing else, but the real kind. The kind that suggests maybe the past doesn't have to define the future forever. Maybe invisible work isn't wasted work. Maybe someone is watching, even when you think no one is. I'll take the apartment, Thomas says quietly, and the consultation work. Thank you. Pryor nods. Move in whenever you're ready. The unit needs some work. The previous tenant left it in rough shape. But I figure you're good at fixing things. The manager walks away, leaving Thomas standing in the laundry room with a light fixture in his hands and a sudden sense that the walls he's built around himself for 7 years might actually have a door. 3 weeks later, Maya starts her new job. It's everything she hoped. Challenging, stable, with a path for advancement and benefits that include health insurance and a retirement plan. On her first day, she wears the same blazer she wore to the interview, but it doesn't look quite as worn anymore. She's had it professionally cleaned, and she pairs it with new slacks she could finally afford. Lily starts at a better school. They put down a deposit on a 2-bedroom apartment in a safer neighborhood. Everything is changing. Everything is getting better. And it all started with a broken wheelchair and a man who decided to fix it at midnight. Maya doesn't forget. She can't. Every day when she wheels through her office building, when she drops Lily off at school, when she does the 1,000 small things that mobility allows, she thinks about Thomas, about the chance he gave her, about the sacrifice he made. One Saturday, she goes back to the old building. She finds Thomas in the first-floor apartment, working on the HVAC system. The unit is small but clean, with evidence of recent repairs, new paint on the walls, fixed cabinets, a window that actually opens. Thomas has made it habitable, made it a home. I wanted to see how you're doing, Maya says. Thomas looks up from the HVAC diagram he's studying. Doing fine. You? The job is amazing. Lily loves her new school. We're moving next week. She pauses. I brought you something. She hands him an envelope. Inside is $500 in cash. It's not all of it, but it's a start. I'll pay you back the rest, I promise. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. You gave me a chance when I had none. The least I can do is help you get yours. Thomas takes the envelope, but he doesn't open it. He sets it on the table and looks at Maya. I'm getting there. The consultation work is helping. I've been saving. In a few months, I'll have enough for the certification exam. And then we'll see. Maybe I can start doing freelance engineering. Maybe someone will take a chance on me. Maybe not. But at least I'll have tried. Maya nods. She understands. Trying is all anyone can do. Trying and being ready when the chance comes. There's something else, Maya says. The woman I work for, she runs a nonprofit that designs assistive devices for low-income communities. They're always looking for consultants, people who understand mobility equipment. I told her about you, about what you did for me. She wants to meet you. Thomas goes very still. What did you tell her? The truth. That you used to design medical equipment. That you helped me when no one else would. That you understand these systems better than anyone I've ever met. She pauses. I didn't mention the other stuff. That's your story to tell or not tell. But I wanted you to know the opportunity is there, if you want it. For a long moment, Thomas doesn't speak. He's thinking about the 7 years he's spent being invisible, about the price of trying to hide from the past. He's thinking about the security camera footage that captured him at midnight, kneeling in an empty hallway, leaving something for someone who needed it. He's thinking about how sometimes the only way to move forward is to stop pretending you're someone else. I'll think about it, he says finally. That's all I'm asking. Maya leaves, but she gives Thomas her card with her work number written on the back, just in case. Just as a reminder that chances don't only come once. Sometimes they come again if you're brave enough to take them. The security footage from that night, the footage of Thomas fixing Maya's wheelchair and leaving the replacement part, never gets deleted. The building manager keeps it in the system, marked with a note, "Example of exceptional service." It's not an official commendation. It's just one man's way of acknowledging that sometimes the most important work happens when no one is watching. Sometimes the difference between a life that works and a life that doesn't is whether someone decides to care at 3 a.m. when they could have just gone home. Word spreads through the building, not gossip, but something quieter, more respectful. People start to look at Thomas differently. They nod when they see him in the hallway. They say good morning. They ask if he can help with small repairs, and they tip him even though he tells them not to. Invisibility has a price, but so does being seen. Thomas is learning to live with visibility, learning that maybe he doesn't have to hide anymore. 6 months after the midnight repair, Thomas takes the certification exam. He passes. He applies for freelance engineering work under his real name this time, because hiding hasn't worked and maybe honesty will. Some companies reject him immediately when they see the conviction. Others don't respond at all. But one company, a small firm that designs mobility equipment for children, calls him in for an interview. They know his history. They know about the trial, the prison sentence, the years of working maintenance, and they hire him anyway. We checked your references, the CEO says. David Pryor spoke very highly of you. So did Maya Chen. They both said the same thing, that you fix things properly, that you care about getting it right, that you understand what's at stake when mobility equipment fails. That's what we need. Someone who understands. Thomas starts part-time, doing design consultation work while keeping his maintenance job. Eventually, as the engineering work increases, he transitions away from mopping floors and fixing lights. It's not a dramatic change. There's no movie moment where everything suddenly becomes perfect. It's gradual, incremental, the way real change usually is. But it's change nonetheless. Maya and Thomas stay in touch. Not as friends exactly, but as something deeper. Two people whose lives intersected at exactly the right moment, who understand what it means to get a second chance and not waste it. They meet for coffee sometimes, talk about work and kids and the strange mathematics of kindness. They never forget the security footage, the midnight repair, the moment when one person's desperation met another person's compassion and something important happened. Years later, When someone asks Maya how she got her start at the nonprofit where she now works as a program director, she tells them about the broken wheelchair and the maintenance man who fixed it at midnight. She tells them about the sacrifice he made, about the part he bought with money he'd been saving for years, about how sometimes the smallest acts have the biggest consequences. She tells them about Thomas, who went from maintenance man to senior engineer at a firm that designs cutting-edge mobility equipment. She tells them that he still keeps a photo of that old wheelchair in his office, a reminder of why he does what he does. And when someone asks Thomas how he got his second chance, he tells them about Maya Chen and a job interview she almost missed. He tells them about a moment at midnight when he had to choose between staying invisible and doing something that mattered. He tells them that he chose wrong for years, trying to hide from his past, until one night he chose right. He tells them that sometimes redemption isn't about grand gestures or dramatic moments. Sometimes it's about kneeling in a hallway at 3 a.m. and leaving something behind for someone who needs it more than you do. The security footage still exists somewhere, archived in the building's digital records. No one watches it anymore. It's just data, pixels, and timestamps recording a moment that's passed. But the moment itself, the repair, the sacrifice, the 2.5-hour journey to buy a part that cost everything Thomas had been saving, that moment continues to matter. Not because it was captured on camera, but because it wasn't done for the camera. It was done in silence and secrecy, without expectation of reward or recognition. It was done because it was right, because someone needed help, because invisibility is a choice, and sometimes the only way to be seen is to let yourself be seen doing something that matters. If you found this story meaningful, if it reminded you that small acts of kindness can change lives in ways we never anticipate, consider subscribing to this channel. Every story we share is designed to remind you that compassion matters, that second chances are possible, and that sometimes the most important work happens when no one is watching. Hit that subscribe button, and let's continue exploring the moments that make us human, the moments of struggle, sacrifice, and ultimately, hope.